Welcome back to another episode of the Bonsai Escape. My name is Mike G, and today we're going to have a fun project, something I've been looking forward to all spring, waiting for this Procumbens nana Juniper Tanuki, the new growth to harden off and ready for its pre-summer trimming. I'm a little bit late. We're at the end of June here, but I've had a lot of other projects I've been working on. But great time right now to trim your junipers. All the fresh hardened or new growth has hardened off. It's provided all that energy to the tree, and it's a great time to get in here and thin this out. I will show you a picture of what this looked like last year after its first trimming. And I did post a video of me attaching the live veins of the Procumbens nana Juniper to this deadwood, so check that video out. But this is the fun one. This is one I've been waiting for. Now that I have a little time, it's a beautiful summer afternoon, evening. It's cooling off, and it's a great time to dig into this because it will take some time. But I have a special trick and tool that I use to trim Tanukis to make my job a lot faster. So stay tuned, and we'll see you at the end. All right, I did mention I have a few special tools that helps me speed up the process in trimming my Tanuki. I'm definitely going to recommend and suggest that you wear some safety glasses and some gloves for this, but this is what makes the trimming of Tanuki so much fun. And I use a electric hedge trimmer. I don't use the gas powered ones. I've already lubed up and greased the teeth on this, so she's ready to go. I am going to show you how to trim a Tanuki juniper the fast way. Stay tuned. And that's a trimmed Tanuki. All right, so we've done a pretty good job trimming this large Tanuki, Procumbens nana Juniper. I've basically taken off the padding on the lower sections. It's getting dark, and I need to have some more light to work on this top section. But if you're wondering about the clippers and how I did such a great job with this, it's a trick. And that's what Tanuki is. If you didn't see my other video about how I fixed these live veins onto this hard deadwood, watch that video. But Tanuki is trickery. It's basically a term they use in Japan for, I think they're called raccoon dogs or something, and they're very elusive. And they've coined this term in bonsai to resemble an old juniper or pine tree that was collected in nature and weathered and aged over time with still live veins coming out. Well, you can always do that, or you can make what we call a Tanuki, which is an old piece of deadwood. This is probably a couple 100-year-old piece of juniper deadwood, Utah juniper deadwood. And all I did was take two young, they were probably 2 or 3 year old Procumbens nana whips, and I fixed them onto this deadwood. You can watch the video about that because I got into the specifics about it. And then it was time to trim it. And so it's to give you the appearance that we have this old aging tree with brand new growth coming out of it. This deadwood was treated about 2 years ago, so I've got to treat that this year with some lime sulfur. It'll brighten it up. But you'll see the contrast between the deadwood and the live veins, and it just makes it very appealing. But that's what Tanuki is, and it was kind of a little play on Tanuki terms using those clippers. I hope you're at this point and didn't use your clippers on your tree, because it was a trick, just like Tanuki. I used my trusty shears and branch cutters and went through this tree meticulously, every branch, trimming it out the way it is. And tomorrow I'm going to demonstrate a little bit more about the technique of training or trimming juniper bonsai, especially Procumbens, because it is specific and you have to be very careful about how you do it to get the result you're looking for. And that's what we'll finish up with tomorrow. All right, so stay tuned. All right, we're back at it, working on this giant Procumbens nana Tanuki. And yesterday I showed you well, we don't trim these with hedge trimmers. It's the worst thing to do. It will leave little brown tips on your junipers, and it's very unappealing. So that was just a joke. But I wanted to take a second here and share with you what I'm thinking of with this tree. This is basically the front right here at your angle. Just need to come forward a little bit, but leaning toward you, and you can start seeing the silhouette of what I'm looking for, that apical place. But this area here I want to fill out and bring around. So this is I'm gonna have to do a little bit of wiring on this. You'll notice this big cascading section at the bottom. This is a really low branch. In fact, if you can see down in here, this branch is coming off of from underneath the soil deep into the trunk of one of the Procumbens on the side. And the reason I haven't touched this and let it go, it's just helping thicken that lower section. So I'm not going to do anything with it. I'm just going to continue letting it grow. Ground mound junipers, or these Procumbens nana junipers, are called ground mound. They're creeping junipers. They span out over the ground and cover. It's got basically ground cover. So that's what this one's doing to its name, and it's really just helping thicken that base of the trunk where it attaches to the Tanuki, or to the deadwood. So it's just adding more health. And again, I don't want to take off all the foliage of this juniper because it does gain its strength from foliage. So this is a massive pad that's developed on the bottom, and I'm just going to continue letting that grow for another season probably. Another thing, like I mentioned, I've got 2 Procumben nanas growing through this Tanuki, this deadwood. This one on the side, I've already trimmed it all the way up, the pads, until I got to the very tippy top. And this section here, I haven't touched this. I'm going to let this continue to grow. The more foliage and growth I get from this at the top, the thicker that's going to get. And I need it to thicken through this groove. So I'm going to let this top piece grow. It's not shading out these lower pads and sections. They'll get a lot of light. This is still an area that needs thickening, get thicker and bigger. I'm not going to let it grow any taller. I just wanted to get more strength up in that area, so I'm going to leave that alone. Now the other side, this piece that's coming up has a massive bush up the top, and it's important to trim this stuff back, and I'll show you why. On Procumbens, this is a branch that I clipped off yesterday, and what will happen is, especially if this branch is growing underneath the canopy, it's shaded, and junipers love sun. They thrive in it, and one of their aspects is to sacrifice the interior foliage for sunlight. So they'll expand shoots to grow out longer. I'll try to find a better example of this. This is probably a good one. This is a better example. This was from one of the other pads. But what will happen is when the foliage on top covers the sunlight, it'll just start extending its branches to go find more sunlight, and you get these long, leggy, if you can see that, you get these long, leggy branches with no foliage on them and just long tips with pom-poms at the end. And that's what I want to limit and minimize on this. If you let a juniper grow too long with thick, dense foliage like this, it looks great from here, but once you start digging in, you'll start finding a lot of long, skinny branches that have no foliage on them, and junipers don't necessarily backbud very easily. You can see this one here. They backbud from their crotches, from the interior growth coming in from the branch splitting. And if you trim back excessively like I have, this will continue to fill in the back of the pad instead of extending long branches to seek the sun. So that's what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to keep these pads, foliage pads, compact and filled in, but they need sunlight, a lot of sunlight, so you've got to clear them out. That's what I'm going to work on up top here. Essentially, what I'll share with you, I'm not going to bore you too much with what's going on up here because I'm going to get working on that, but this is the pad, a branch that was coming out, and all I'm doing is going underneath and plucking anything that's growing down. Like this branch, this I would pluck that off. So now we're getting a flatter pad development. And then anything that's growing upward, like for instance this branch right here, I would trim that back to the base. Now I'm not going to trim it across like this, simply just cut it, because that will all brown and look really horrible. So what I like to do is I come down into the next node where I have a little branch developing, and I trim it off there. It's very intricate. You have to go into basically every branch. This long extension, this is new growth from this past spring. If I want this branch to continue to thicken, I'll just let that continue to grow. The problem with that is we're going to get a long, skinny branch with very little foliage at the base because it's being shaded by the other foliage. So when I'm going through this pad, if I want the length and I want to do something with that length, I might leave it. But essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that new growth and cut it back, and this is actually like a downward growing one. I'm going to cut it back way back to the base, so now I have this nice little pad. And then I start looking for areas where I can create ramification. So here's the other extension tip. This is a growing tip. I'm going to cut the middle of this out back to the base of a new branch coming in, which is right here. And now I've got a fork in that branch, and that'll start creating that ramification I'm looking for. And that'll help produce the pads that you're looking for in the branch. And that's what I'm looking to do up here. This being the front of the tree, I want this pad, this whole thing to kind of wrap around. So I'm going to leave some of this length here so I can wire it into a position and still create the same visual apical view and down sloping of this back branch with this one, and probably thin this out a little bit up here. I want these to develop further out on this side, not too much more. But that's what I'm going to be working on right now, just thinning this big mass up here out, because we're getting long branches. Like this one here is a great example of what I was talking about. I've got no foliage on the inside. It's just going to continue to shoot out, and I'll have a skinny long branch with a big pom-pom on the end. It's not desirable. You can't really work with that. So early on I need to keep trimming these things back. One of the misconceptions with junipers, it's hard to tell right now because it's already hardened off the new growth, but all these tips that are coming out is an indication of really strong root growth. But what a lot of people do or used to do is they take these tips and just pluck them off and call that trimming or pruning. But what happens is you haven't reduced the foliage mass interiorly, and it's going to cause a lot of dieback. If I dig in here, we'll probably start seeing some foliage turning yellow because it's not, here's a piece that's not getting any sunlight, and it'll eventually sacrifice all that interior growth to get these extensions out into the sun. So that's what we have to do today, get that cut back and put this into a better shape for the next growing season. So that's what I'm going to work on, and I'll update you as I go. Well, we're finished trimming for the most part. I just wanted to share with you kind of how thinned out this is, and you get a good idea. I think this looks like it's pretty much the front for you, slightly leaning towards you, and you can see that apical kind of direction that I'm looking for. I've got to do some wiring on this tree. I've got to get this branch pulled down and around, and that's kind of where I had started a couple of years ago with the direction of this. Now that I've got it thinned out, I can see a little bit better where the branch structure is. But I'm going to get some wire on this. These pads have developed nicely. Got to do a little bit of some wiring in these areas. The back side, you know, I'll let some of this stay. I may decide on clipping one of these branches off. I'm not sure yet. But I still have to remember this is a very young tree. I've only had it in development for 2 years that I developed this tree. So those other, those Procumbens were a couple of years old, very vigorous and strong. But other than that, that's kind of what I'm going for. The goal is to keep reducing this length of the branch back so I have nice compact foliage back toward this trunk, and then it'll give it that nice silhouette with the apex of the deadwood being the main feature of this composition. I think that came out pretty nice. And now that I've got a lot of the foliage cleared out, I can get some lime sulfur on the deadwood this year. But that's where we'll stop right now. Thanks for joining, and if you enjoyed this video, subscribe.